So now I'd like to turn to Dave Schultz for the completion of the All Nation build along of the waffle side boxcar. Dave, welcome.
Thanks again. Okay. Anyway, yep, this will be the end of it. We should have most of the car built. The roof is in place. You don't have to glue it in place, but you can choose to do so. Anyway, we're going to put on some of the finishing details of this. And so we'll start in. First thing we got to put in some couplers on this beast. So here's the draft gear. The coupler pocket is on the end. And you can see the chain for the handbrake and all that stuff's in there. So first thing we do, you can see on the coupler that was provided with the kit, I filled in the hole because I'm not going to have the coupler moving in and out. I'm going to have that solid because the draft gear is going to do that for us. So I fill in the hole with styrene, and then I drill a new hole that we will use to mount the coupler with. So there you can see that I've got it temporarily screwed into place. And what we're going to do is we're going to build up the outside edge with styrene to cover up the nut so you can't see that. So we get a piece. In this case, it was a piece of 40 thousandths. So that's what it'll take to cover the coupler and that nut when it's all said and done. And here it is. I've got the pieces. I glued them into place, and then I sanded around the edges to make it match the outside of the draft gear that is provided. And you can see I've marked where the hole is going to be by holding the coupler exactly where I wanted it. And then I marked it with a pencil, and then I drilled the hole out. And then I use the a brass 256 screw for this operation. And there the screw is in place on top. Now I'm doing the same thing on top. I'm going to build up with some, I think that's 40 thousandths I had to use. I flatten the head of that screw a little bit, and I'll either use some contact cement or something to just lightly hold it in there. Because I'm going to cover all this up so you can't see the top of the screw. I hate the look of that, but that's my preference. So, yeah, my pictures are out of order again. Anyway, you can see the bottom where I added the pieces to hide the nut, and the hole drilled in the top. Yep, a little out of order. Anyway, there it is. I put a 20 thousandths piece over the top, and then I sanded it to match the rest of the coupler. So this is how it's going to look on top of the coupler. I got the car sitting upside down, but I laid the draft gear across there so you can see it. Okay, so then the coupler will be mounted. You'll screw that in place. Now on my car, I measured right next to the end, and you can see by the dial caliper, which is a truly handy item, and they're not terribly expensive anymore. I measured next to the ends, and then I went to the middle of the car, and of course you can see a little bit of a gap there, so that she's bowed out just a little bit. So I glued together some 60 thousandths plastic, and I trimmed it down to fit on the very end, snugly on the end of the car. And then what I ended up doing is glue them in the middle to pull the sides together just a little bit. And that'll square that car up nicely. In this picture here, you can see I've got the interior. I got the nailable steel floor. I've got the rings on the side of the wall for the tie downs. And this was the high end kit. It includes all the extra detail. The car probably should have opening doors so you can actually see that stuff. I'm going to have the roof removable on this one, so it won't be such a problem. But that would be probably a whole other show to show how to make those with opening doors. Anyway, I'm going to build the kit as it comes in the box. Next, we got to put on some of the rails for the boxcar door to travel on. These come with notches for the bottom, and you'll notice all of this. This takes a little bit of filing. You got to take your files and go through and clean up those boxes, and then keep test fitting to get everything to fit. As you can see, on towards the left there, the squares are getting a little bit off, but it's not too big a deal to take a little needle file and go in there and just widen that up a little bit to get those to fit. Takes a little bit practice to get all of them to fit properly, but when you're done, it'll look like that. And you try to keep it square. I glued one time, and it bowed out on me a little bit, and I wasn't paying attention, so I had to break it all off there and do it again. But anyway, we got her on nice and straight, so that'll look good on the doors. And then you glue the top rail on place, and that one's pretty simple. It just goes across the top. You've got to stop on the ends, so you try to line it up with the stops. Otherwise, your stops are going to be off. But anyway, if you look down the car, you can see the stops line up. and you glue that piece in, and you just repeat it on the other side. Do the same thing with the other side, and then you've got that in place. The ladders. Now I mentioned you could use some intermountain ladders if you want a much finer look, but I'm going to try and stick with using the material that came with the car. Now, I wasn't completely happy with that. A guy could remove those, put in a piece of wire, but I found that this stuff is fairly sturdy, and I'm able to take a Dremel and go in there and grind some of that out of there. I actually used a cutoff wheel and just lightly went back and forth on that until I got the rung slimmed up a little bit. And then I took a file to finish it off. And this filament really is some tough stuff. It's kind of amazing how well that worked. Then, of course, and the one thing, I don't know if the instructions talk about this. I kind of read through the instruction one time, but my father taught me once that instructions are just another man's opinion. So anyway, there is the crossover platform on the ends of the cars. There's a railing that goes between the ladders. So I drilled a hole in about a 20 thousandths hole on the one end of the ladder. And you can see them matched up here. The holes, of course, when the ladders are parted, the grab iron will go all the way across the end of the car, and it gives something for the train crew to hang on to when they're crossing over between ends of the car. So we've got our ladders, all the rungs are trimmed up, got the holes drilled, and these are the crossover platforms. Now, I got really kind of bored one night, and I noticed on the back sides of these, there's little dimples. So I took a drill bit, 20 thousand drill bit, and a needle file or a holder, and I drilled all those holes out. And you really have got to be bored to do this kind of stuff, or really, really kind of crazy. But anyway, I drilled those out, sanded them, had to do it a couple times, then go through with like an X-Acto knife and just clean the hole out a little bit, because you get a little bit of fuzz in there and such. And I find that a brand new sharp number 11 will go in there and you just twirl it a little bit and it'll clean those holes up pretty well. And then, of course, you've got your handbrake chain that gets in the way. So you've got to make this notch in one of the end platforms so that the chain will drop down through there. I don't think it mentions that in the directions, but then I don't know how many people are actually going to go through the trouble of putting in a handbrake chain and all that. But for those who like to do it, like myself, that's a necessary item. So there it is. The coupler's in place. The handrails are on. And I didn't take my last picture showing the grab iron going between the, oh yeah, I did. It's in the next photo. Anyway, crossover platform's in place. That there's little knobs that stick out. That glues right in there. Real nice. Ladders are on. They fit right on the little knobs that are provided on the car. And then, oh, yep. I was going to modernize this car a little bit. And there was one thing that this was kind of a last minute adjustment. It gives you coupler lift rod holders, but they're kind of when the cars first came out. Later on, they made a different style of pin lifter. And I wanted to modernize the car a little bit into like late 70s. So anyway, I cut 6 pieces. This is all 20 thousandths plastic. 6 little squares. They're about, probably a 1/4 inch wide. By 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch works actually. But I think I went a little bit bigger than that. Anyway, you start gluing these things together into these corner pieces like this. And then I glued them on a piece of 20 thousandths and then trim it all up. So you end up with a piece that looks like this. Then you glue the other piece on in the opposite direction. And then what you're going to do is put that same brace on the opposite side of that. So you're going to, it's kind of a confusing picture, but you can kind of see what I've done here. So it makes kind of a W look, or even a Z. Clean and trim that up, and then add the little coupler lift rod holder into that corner. And then this will glue up into the corner of the car. And it gives you that more modern look that they use today, which on the railroad, if you step on that to get up onto the ladder, the railroad is going to write you up immediately. You can't be using things like, as handy as they are, there's nothing more handy than a coupler lift rod to step up onto the crossover platform. And yet the railroad guy has real heartache over that. So don't have your crew members standing on that lift pin when you get up in there. Now, I didn't bother to put in the coupler lift rod. The draft gear moves in and out, and I've got to kind of devise a way to make that. And I'm probably going to do the way the real railroads do, which is kind of an expanding lift pin. It's got to be either telescoping type stuff, or they even make a style of lift rod where it's like a paper clip, and then the lift rod that goes to the coupler actually has two grips that hold on to that paper clip shape and slide back and forth as the draft gear goes in and out. I didn't get that far on it. You can see here I've got the wire put in for the grab irons on the side of the car, and you can see that I've thinned up the ladders on the ends of the car. And so here's the B end. You can see that I've got that grab iron up above, got the roof in place, the coupler is in place. I've got a coat of primer on it. I probably will this week start painting it. I'm not sure. I think I'm going to go with Rock Island. The handbrake I have on here is an Intermountain handbrake. The one that came with the kit required a lot of cleaning up, and I've got a lot of sprues from Intermountain car kits. So I just popped one of those out of there and stuck it in the end of the car because I thought it looked good. But anyway, that is the B end of the car, and it kind of rhymes with the end. That's kind of what I have for you. Hopefully you were able to follow along. I didn't go too fast, I didn't stump anybody, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to give me a holler at the end of the show and we'll go on from there. So Jim, I'm turning it back over to you.
Well, Dave, I can't thank you enough for doing this. You've done a beautiful build on that car, and it's really great to see All Nation back in the market again after all these years. And I hope they have the greatest success possible. And certainly you've made a contribution to their success. Thanks for doing this.